All right, we're back with Delial Akiyama game 5. We watched games 3 and 4, and they were very interesting. Um, this is I think, weird rule set to find starters on. It's same plus random combo, so no plus wall. This generally favors second turn. Now you might say, but plus wall basically doesn't exist here anyway. The sixes are the only numbers that can either plus wall or be plus walled. But that is to say, level one is kind of like same plus random combo anyway, whether or not plus wall is on, which means you'd probably think it's a kind of second turn favored set. And we have seen in these games, except for one of them, uh, game two, second turn getting an advantage in this matchup, and first turn having to be careful. We've had this interesting battle between Deli's corner starters being met by strong moves in 5 from Akiyama, and Delial kind of finding these interesting paths by going next to wherever Akiyama plays and forcing the action in a way where he can do something to neutralize the pressure and where he can set up his remaining cards to play well. And I think he's done a nice job of that. Akiyama, how many first turns has Akiyama had? This is only Akiyama's second first turn in the match. In the previous one, he went for a defensive side, and we'll see what he does this time because visually, the hand does not look like another defensive side's. Nope. Uh, he does go the defensive side again. But this is limited because Deli can take whatever he puts out. Stuff makes fun of me for doing this because I go, ah, yes, I remember back when. But if we go back, let's go back. It's gonna be somewhere in my notes. We go back, archives, Triple Triad records, okay, and we go to quarter 4 of 2021 with the return, and we go to chat tournament 2. Let's say 2. Chat tournament 2. Um, no. Chat tournament 3. No. Chat tournament 4. All right, I clearly don't have this. So in 2021, Akiyama was a quite interesting player. I was looking back at some old stats because I think he played like really poorly for the first month, and I was kind of confused why he was supposed to be so good, and then really well in the next 2 months, like really, really well. Like just like very close to flawless triple triad after a month of just like chucking games right and left. Um, and he won a bunch of those games he chucked, and his win percentage was not actually enormously higher, but like he was playing a lot better, like a lot better. Um, and this was in the period before he was playing better, and we played in one of the early chat tournaments, and he just played a side starter that was just immediately losing. Like he just had nothing that directionally fit with it on a low level rule set like this one. And you can see Deli went, okay, 3315 is my card to cover anything you can put in 1 or 7. If three, so I wanna play safely in either 1 or 7 and have 3315 ready to take whatever you play in a way where you can't combo it. Now, notably, 3315 actually couldn't be comboed in either 2 or 8, right? Because 3251, 6 plus 1 does not actually equal 5 plus 3. Um, but if you look at Deli's hand, it's a little more up facing than down facing, though very close. And you might think that would lead Deli towards playing higher on the board. But Akiyama is now going to most likely play in 1, and Deli's going to attack it from 2. So because Deli can attack successfully, where more cards are going to be is where Akiyama is going to play because that's where Deli's going to attack. Um, so what I think is happening here is Deli recognizes by playing in 7, he will make more cards on the top of the board. And by playing in 1, he would make more cards on the top of the board because where more cards is going to be is where Akiyama is going to play, not where Deli's going to play. So Deli plays to make Akiyama play on the part where Deli wants to attack. Now, the saving grace for Akiyama here, and the reason I don't think he's going to lose this game, is 3-4-3-1 and 2-6-2-1 are just kind of trash here. The reason he might still lose is because 5-1-4-2 could easily sweep the right. It's really easy to imagine a position where Akiyama plays 1, Deli takes from 2, Akiyama takes from 5, Deli plays 2-6-2-1 safely in 8, and suddenly 5-2-4-1 sweeps the endgame. That's really easy to envision. I don't think it will happen. I think 4-1-4-3 is going to be a saving grace for Akiyama. I think it's very important that he not use that card immediately. I don't quite understand why Deli played 3-3-4-1 rather than 3-4-3-1. Maybe there was some setup he was worried about, but it seems to me that having 3-4-3-1 and 2-6-2-1 in his hand is going to be a problem. My guess is he calculated some specific line where 3-4-3-1 was worth holding on to and made a clear difference. Or maybe he found some interesting safety setup I'm not seeing. Like he noticed if they go 1 and he goes 3-4-3-1 and 8, maybe they have combo play against 4-1-4-3 and 5 or something. But I don't know why you would there, but not with 3-3-1-4. So I don't really understand 3-3-1-4 and 7. Like I understand going there in general. I think 7 makes a little more sense than going in 1. I like that choice. I don't think that's an obvious choice, and I do like it. Akiyama, interestingly, and we've seen this a lot this match, or we've seen things that hinted at this. He plays the most forcing move in 1, and by forcing I mean it gives Delial the fewest options, so it is easiest to calculate more deeply. Um, and yeah, I always think that's the most straightforward way to play, and has its effect, even if they can take it. Um, it just means you have less work to do calculating. And when you're behind, and I firmly believe Akiyama is behind, you want to have to do less calculation. Still don't understand 3-3-1-4 and 7. That seems, I don't know, unnecessary, right? Just a little like, I don't see the variation where that card was more relevant. And it doesn't mean there isn't one, right? It never means that. It just means I don't see it. I will note Deli has a pretty good record in positions where there's multiple cards that could go in a square, and there's a big difference between them, but it is not obvious. Like the cards look like they're clearly doing different things, but it's just hard to evaluate which is doing more important things. He has a very good record of picking the right card for that square. I think that's something he is notably very good at, and probably better than the other greats of the game. I think that is one advantage he has, is he really hones down usually on, I know I want to play here. Which card do I want to play? There's a bunch of options that are very hard to distinguish between in value, and he makes good choices there. It is a strength of his. I'm gonna check the Discord, see if there's anything going on there. All right, so I'm still expecting 2. Is there some big setup in 6 though? Ooh. All right, so Akiyama had originally picked up 3-2-5-1, but he put it back. And now if we pay attention, which I had not done till now, we can see why. If 3315 goes in 5 and 2, he might be planning 3251 in 6. And this sets up 3322 to have both sides. Now, he might not be intending this because Deli can then play in 3. And if Akiyama does play 3322 and 5, Deli has 2621 in 8. And even though Akiyama might have the combo back there, because 4153, 5 plus 4 equals 3 plus 6, so that's 6 facing right and that 5 facing down, Deli goes into it. Okay. This is interesting, because there's a bunch of choices here. There's, I want to snag a card where I can. This would say you go in 5. There's, I have a big setup, and there is a big setup here. Like, this is very serious. 3251 and 6 is a very serious try. And there's also just, I'm going to grab safety. And often in these positions, you just play 3251 and 3, and they just don't have a way to take enough cards. You are down 6-4, but you have things you're pressuring on board, and for them to block them in, they'll have to give you more things to pressure on board. So if I had to make a move in 10 seconds here, and I was not confident, I might play 3251 and 3. I might think, like, in limited time, this gives me the best chance of holding a tie, because if I play 5 or 6, I have to check a bunch of things to make sure it works. And if I play 3, I don't know, there's something, it's less likely to win than the other moves, but it's sort of more likely to tie. I'm gonna pop open the solver because now I'm curious, and I've done some calculation for the previous games, and I am lazy, so this is, see the prior video for me doing occasional small amounts of suspicious calculation, and yeah, we'll see what happens here. I like that Akiyama has not played yet. It's a 7-minute game, so that's 420 seconds. So he is, 2.5 minutes into thinking. If this was a 3-minute game, he would be using a majority of his time, which I think is worth doing here because this is a real pivot point to the game. You screw up here, you don't screw up here, you tie with maybe very slim winning chances, though I don't think it's a win. So Deli goes 2. Oh, apparently there's a lot of ties here. All right, so my safest move was 3251 to 3, which does tie. My next plan, my aggressive move was 3251 to 6, which ties, and Deli has only one tie in response. He has to go 3. This makes sense. You go 3 and you have 8 in response to 5. And you have to go 3 specifically with 3431 so that you have a 3 down so that when they combo back in 9 at the end, they don't combo through 6 to flip 3 back. Very important. Nice touch. I hadn't gotten to that touch yet. Cool. And there also are ties in 5, though there also are ways to lose in 5. There is one tie in 5. It has to be 3251. Okay. The other interesting question this game was, after Deli's move 3314 and 7, was that preferable to 3431 and 7? And a very quick solver check says it was preferable. Okay. I still don't know why. It's giving it by a small enough margin. It's still possible I'm right, but it's very unlikely that Deli is significantly wrong. As in, I think it's unlikely. Extremely unlikely. His move gave 5 ties. My move gave 7 ties. Last time I said 4 versus 8 was pretty huge and really unlikely to not mean one move was better. 5 versus 7, is in one sense only one off on each, but percentage-wise, it's much closer. And but it means Deli's move is probably 3314 and 7 is probably the better move, and I don't know why that would be. I mean, 3315 and 3314 are incredibly redundant cards. Maybe something to do with that? I don't know. I think, like, you want to be able to describe things in general principles, but then you want to be able to show in specific variations why the general principle holds up. When you start playing a game, you have to start learning principles and describing things through principles. But the better you get at it, the more you understand, this is how this principle applies here. And here are specific interactions that happen around this principle. And I understand how those interactions go. So when I say the principle, now that I'm better at the game, I am implying a lot of these kind of specific scenarios that don't follow for weaker players from the principle kind of thing. So there's the principle of we have like these two cards are the same that you should probably get one of them out of your hand. But it seems to me that 3-1-3-1-4 should have a lot more play than 3-4-3-1 does for the rest of the game. Um, and maybe it didn't for reasons that are clear in our key line here. If Akiyama plays 3-2-5-1 and 6, and Akiyama really is actually thinking this through, Delhi needs to have 3-4-3-1 and 3 to tie. So maybe this is our specific variation that having this extra 3 down actually is super critical to how this line works. That's possible. It's an interesting thought. Hard to see at distance, but again, Delhi is really good at finding the right decisions when you sort of the sort of calculation reasons are out of range. All right, Akiyama does go for 3-2-5-1 and 3, which is, I think, the as I said, I think this is the if you don't get to think through everything and you just need to make a move that probably doesn't lose, this is your best shot. 3-2-5-1 and 6 was, as we know, higher pressure, but if you are not sure of it, or you think the tie is really straightforward, and it might be 3 then 8, then this is a little bit. It's sort of more forcing and less forcing. It's not forcing in that it doesn't force an immediate reply, but it's more forcing in that it doesn't create a position where there is only one solution for the opponent. And like, if I show 10 doors to you and give you some clues as to which door to go through, and there's only one door that you can go through that works, it might be hard because there's only one door, but also all the clues are kind of going to, all of them will apply to the same door, right? That same door is going to have a bunch of clues. However, what if there are a bunch of clues and there are 3 doors you can go through, but this means a bunch of the clues will not apply to any specific correct door. If the right doors are doors 2, 6, and 8, there are going to be some clues that relate to 2, but there are going to be a bunch of clues that don't. They're relating to 6 or 8 or both. And so that situation where there are 3 doors and what draws you to each is kind of different could be more difficult than where there is one door, but everything points at least as much to that door as to any other door. You could have it be if you were picking at random, you have a much better chance in the 3-door scenario, but reasoning logically, assuming you don't perfectly solve it, it could be easier to pick the 1-door situation than the 3-door situation. This is to say, there are lines where, yes, there's only one answer, but everything points to that being the answer, so you're going to get it right. And positions where there's there's a bunch of possible answers, and that can give more room to get something wrong. Now, the more your opponent is playing randomly or not following cues on the board, which is generally to mean the weaker the opponent, the more you could say, I'm just going to pick the line that gives them the fewest options. But it can go either way. One thing I wanted to talk a little more about while we avoid actually doing any calculation in this endgame, maybe we should calculate one line and just be like, okay, we found a tie, we can move on. All right, so let's say, is 3, 4, 3, 1, and 5 a tie? Probably. Let's move on. All right. We solved that. At least we pretended to. No, it isn't. 4, 1, 4, 3, and 9. Yeah, alright, so my first instinct was not a tie, so I cannot claim to have just solved it. So actually, any move Deli plays in 5 is combo susceptible. That's interesting. So what about 3-4-3-1 in 8? If Akiyama goes uh 3-3-2-2 and 5, he flips one thing, making it 5-5. Deli can play 5-2-4-1 and 6, and 4-1-4-3 blanks. Again, it's so easy to blank a card at the end. If Akiyama goes 4-1-4-3 and 5, he flips two things, going up 6-4. Deli can play 5-2-4-1 and 6. There's two fours facing out, 3-3-2-2 blanks. That's a tie. Um, if Akiyama goes in 6, he can set up combo potential with 3-3-2-2. Deli can then play 5-2-4 5-1-4-2 and 5, so it doesn't combo extra. That's going to be a tie. So 6 is a tie. And if Akiyama goes in 9, Deli will necessarily still lead 6-4, and 5-1-4-2 and 5 cannot possibly be comboed. Okay, we found a tie. Um, and possibly the one he's about to play because he has picked up 3-4-3-1. So I can move on to the topic I wanted to talk about because we did some basic calculations. And what was that topic? Who knows now? Oh, it was sort of this idea of if your opponent, if you have repeatedly posed your opponent a specific type of problem and they have repeatedly proved themselves capable of meeting that specific problem, what should you do? And I sort of said there's a case for start posing new problems, and there's a case for pose whatever you're most comfortable with posing because that's what you're going to be best at doing. Now, if you're trying to get better as a player, you should try to be posing different kinds of problems just to figure out how they work, right? The problems that aren't natural to you to pose, but you've seen other players pose successfully, worth trying to figure out how they work for yourself, and practice is the best way to do so. But for like one game where you're not trying to learn, you're trying to win, or one match where you're trying to win, what's the best thing to do? And my instinct is do what you're most comfortable with. That's what you will calculate best and most precisely. But if you do that, you're sort of only going to be as good as you are, right? You're not going to be, you're not going to do anything that isn't within your normal range. You're not going to pose more difficult problems than you normally pose. Okay, Deli goes creative. Um, and, ooh, that concedes 6. Is that a problem? I'm confused. Is he trying to play in response to 6? Is he trying to. Sorry, that concedes 8. Is he trying to meet 8 with 6? And 4-1-4-3 hilariously blanks? That's wild. That's wild. This feels wrong to me. I don't trust this. So, okay. What if 4-1-4-3 and 6? That makes it 5-5. Oh no, then Deli can go 8. Okay. What okay, so what if 3-3-2-2 and 8, that's gonna flip 7 and 9. Akiyama leads 6-4. But Deli can play either of his cards in 6. He flips two things back, making it 6-4 the other way. And 4-1-4-3 only flips two back, and it's a tie. Weird. Does this work? This isn't supposed to work. What you doing, Deli? So 4-1, 4-3, and 6 was my other instinct. But I thought then Deli can go 3-4, 3-1, and 8. And that's just a tie, right? Man, what a weird way to tie. Deli, you're weird. Maybe my way didn't work. Maybe I was just wrong. Let's pop that solver open again. Or maybe Deli went, creative with multiple options to do so. So Akiyama went 3. There were 3 ties here. I wanted 3, 4, 3, 1, and 8. That is one of the ties. Deli played 5, 1, 4, 2, and 9. That is another of the ties. Yeah, Deli's just creative. The weirdest tie was 3, 4, 3, 1, and 6. That is peculiar. No, probably not weirdest. This was probably weirdest. All right. We have another tie in this match. A very good match. Interesting games. I was going to say on the general ratings, man, I am all over the place today. Can't just keep a topic in mind. What was I going to say? Oh, general ratings. So these I update every weekly tournament, except I'm a few chat tournaments behind, I think. So maybe I'll update that shortly. No, this is weekly Open 70 or chat tournament 70. So I'm actually up to date. Entering this tournament, Seto is 2482 and has been for a little while. He hasn't played the last few events. Deli has ranged in the last 5 events between 2464 and 2490. So at the end of chat tournament 68, he was number 1. He is currently number 2, 4 points behind Seto. Turds has ranged between 25-22 after his huge win of TTAC 16, followed by winning chat tournament 67, and a low of 24-67, which is his current rating. He's currently in 3rd. And Akiyama has ranged between 24-40 and 24-97, and is currently in 4th at 24-66. But this means basically any time in the last month or two, all these players have been within, except for Turds' Spike, all these players have basically been within a 20-point range of each other, and we have switched back and forth who is the leader. Akiyama has not held the lead at any point. When he was 24.97, Turds was 24.99. So he has not held the lead, but all 3 of the others have, and they are all very much in range of being the highest rated active player. So it's a kind of fun battle between them. And that means if Akiyama wins this, he's definitely going into 1st, right? He's currently 12 behind Deli. If he beats Deli, he will more than make up that gap. And he's 16 behind Seto. And if he wins this tournament, including beating Deli, he will pass Seto and move into number 1 active player territory. If Deli wins, he is 4 points behind Seto, so he will probably hit 2,500 and move into clear number 1, at least for a little bit. So, yeah. Elo ratings are good, and this is a match that is very much fighting it out for who is number 1 on the site right now, based on the tournament evidence we have. Deli his first turn, which as we've seen is a bit of a problem. The first turn player has generally been behind in these games. Only one game it hasn't. And that's even been true when first turn had kind of safety to play, as they've been normally on the back foot, which might draw me towards I love my weak corners. Now, Deli's hand doesn't really have a great weak corner. If you've watched some recent videos of mine, you know I think Funguar in 1 is the greatest starter of all time. But Deli doesn't have such options. I would notice he has a lot of very redundant cards. 3-2-2-3, 5-2-2-2, and 4-2-2-3 are all doing very similar work. And so my instinct would be get rid of one of those. But also, all Deli's cards, if we count those 3 cards, and you could argue one of them isn't, but if we count those 3 cards as corners for 9, then Deli has only corners for 9 and 1 in his hand. And that is a really clumsy type of hand. It's usually not like a you are lost type of hand, but it's because like you're not devoid of power in any direction, but it's you're really going to have to find a way to make your cards click for this to work well. This is just not a particularly fun type of hand to play. Now you might say Akiyama has 2-4-1-3 and 3-5-1-4, but these perform slightly more varied duties and they're kind of easier to get out of your hand because they combine a little better to create problems and solve those problems. If you play 2-4-1-3 and 3, for instance, it's got a pretty high number facing out in the 3, so it can create problems for the opponent, and 3-5-1-4 can capture it both ways. If you try to do the same thing with, say, 5-2-2-2, yes, your other two cards can capture it both ways, but you haven't really created any problems for your opponent. You're only having 2s facing out. The gap between 2 and 3 is just very large on level 1. And you've got these two corners for 1 that are miserable. The problem with this hand is not, I mean, it has balance in that it has some power in each direction, but they are all from the same corners. And that means anything that makes your bottom two cards happy makes your top two cards unhappy, and vice versa. So I do not envy Deli having to find a starter here, is I guess what I am saying very clunkily. I think this is a unpleasant position to work with. And I'm curious to see what he does, and I am not going to try to figure it out for myself, because why torture yourself? Deli gets to play the horrible position. I don't have to. And it's not horrible, right? It's just, this is an extremely clumsy hand. Deli asked, did he scare anyone with 9? Yes. That did indeed scare me. You got me, Deli. Do we have anything to do while talking about here? I keep trying to find new topics when there's actually stuff to talk about in the game. There's a Tetris tournament going on, as there so often is. We love Tetris, greatest competitive sport in human history. Yeah, but I don't think too much to say about that. Now I'm watching Tetris. I clicked over to that tab. All right, don't get distracted by the pretty Tetris. Come back to Triple Triad. What we got? Well, in about 70 seconds, we'll have a move. How to fill the time today. Coming out recently, you've had Piggy slaying the Spire with me, Deli beating or playing Bot Club Spade, sometimes winning, sometimes tying. There is a Bot Club Joker vs. Deli video, which went so much worse and is deeply embarrassing to both Deli and myself. So I probably will release it at some point, but I wanted to release a video where we were less terrible at the game first. For my own ego. Deli says he's seeing nothing here. Yeah, I am seeing nothing as well. Chuck something in 1. Maybe you can get away with chucking it in 3. But it's really clumsy. All right, he goes 9. Yeah, so Deli has been playing bigger things and more forcing things than I do. But I don't. It seems like Akiyama should be able to take this. Now, Deli's point might be if you have to take it with 2-4-3-1, then I can play 5-2-2-2 and 7. And I grab a safe card, and maybe I'm not so behind there. But my question is, what if Akiyama snags it with 2-4-1-3 or 3-5-1-4? Maybe Deli's just saying I can run you out of power in that direction. And I can go kind of behind, but I think I can come back later. For instance, if you play 2-4-1, 3, and 8, and Deli plays, say, 3-4-4-1, and 7, then you can't take his 3-4-4-1 because 6-2-4-1 and 4 now has another 2 facing out, and Deli has a same and 5 with 5-2-2-2. So maybe he has some play there. So okay, what about 3-5-1-4 and 8? Maybe there's some big setup for combos, like 2-3-3-2 in 4. Maybe there's play here. Okay, maybe there's play here. Yeah, Deli's been doing a lot of, at least from what I've seen of him, of really trying to get the strong corners to work, even if there's a problem with them. And I kind of like this attitude. There was a video I watched a while ago of Sam Shankland. It was like a preview of some course he taught. This is a chess grandmaster, um, saying like, "What are you trying to do in this position? Like, what do you strategically want to do?" And just trying to get that to work. And that there are a lot of times where there is something clearly desirable, but it will look like it doesn't work. And what can you do to make it work? And I think Deli is doing a lot of this, of like, I want to play something that can challenge my opponent. It has some obvious problems, but I see some ideas in those problems, and I'm going to try to force it through. But it's led to him playing a lot of very big corners, which has some upsides and some downsides. Bot Club Spade would approve. Very tough spot to find a starter, I think. Now, if we've learned anything from the rest of this match, and we have not, but if we have, is it not that Akiyama is going to play like Funguar in 5? Is that not what we've learned? I feel like that's what we've learned. Akiyama will play Funguar in 5. Saying, if you let me, I can land 6-2-4-1 and 6, and that's safe. It doesn't set you up. It does set you up to have 6 as well, so maybe he won't. But it also sets me to have 3-5-1-4 and 8, and that's safe. And I just have nice squares for my cards. But that does set up Deli as well, so maybe not so desirable. I don't know. My instincts are just, you want to go 8 here. I could see a case for something. I don't have a card for it though. I was saying, if you look at kind of sack starters, I think the responses that are most often, this is in a vacuum, not specific, but in a vacuum against a sack starter, the best ideas are either to take it or set up against the strong side. So to either go in 8 or to go in 3 in a way that keeps Deli not having 6, because Deli doesn't currently have 6, and you can then make 6 a more kind of permanently dead square while threatening to maybe go there yourself. So on average, with a starter of this type, I would think 3 and 8 are the best moves. On the other hand, the more I look at Funguar in 5, the more I think it has a downside. It gives Deli play. 3-4-4-1 is suddenly really good for Deli, but your cards just get safety wherever you want them. So I think that's a decent move. I kind of like the look of Funguar in 5. I like 8, of course. I like 3 more than 7. If we have to play next to, I'd rather 8 than 6 for I hope obvious reasons. If we're gonna play an adjacent corner, I'd rather 3 than 7. This goes together. 3 and 8 are kind of just fundamentally paired squares because just how kind of L's work, those squares go together against a corner starter. Like, if you play 8 and they go 6, you often go 3. If you play 3 and they go 6, you're intending often to go 8. Those squares go together. Okay, Akiyama does go 3, but he does give Deli 6. This doesn't avoid giving Deli 6, so Deli gains a square he did not previously have. And the reason I didn't start saying moves I liked in 3 was because I didn't find a way to set up stuff I wanted to set up. And it does set up 2-4-1-3 nicely, but it gives Deli play too, and Deli didn't have much play. So any concession to sort of, okay, you can have some play, does feel to me like a major concession. I didn't want to give Deli any play from Akiyama's perspective. On the other hand, Seto plays weak corners like this all the time and then just wins, so, it's probably a great move. But yeah, so of move types, I preferred 8 to 6, I preferred 3 to 7. I did think there was appealing options in 5. If I had to choose between 2 and 4, I would have chosen 4. And how do we feel about 1? Didn't see anything I loved in 1, but it's probably fine. Yeah. Notably, Akiyama did not have 6 before this move, so he did give himself 6. And in fact, this was the only way to give him 6 and 3. So maybe I like this more than I thought I did, just given what options were there. But if you don't like anything in 3, should probably go 8. Maybe he did like this. Alright, we're lazy. Pop open that solver. Just to get a very quick sense. But Deli starter, I think, better than I gave it credit for. And it's always really risky to say that when you're about to open a solver, because it's about to be like, no, this was losing. And then, you would look much smarter if you had stuck with, I think this is terrible. I think if there's a serious problem here, it's an 8. Yeah, that's my eval of this position. All right, Deli plays 9. And the solver says, looks like it says Akiyama has many, many ties. But my eval, not bad. Okay, so there was a win here. And it was an 8, which, yeah, that's how it goes. But if you look at where the losses are, this is the first interesting thing. There are 14 losses total. 3 of them are in 1, so 3 out of 5 moves in 1 lost. And I didn't really give explanation, but I indeed thought 1 did not look very good. So this is 14 out of 40 available moves, which is almost exactly, though slightly over, but almost exactly a third of available moves. So if 3 moves lose in a square, that square is clearly not very desirable. 1 was not very desirable here. How I guess I'd articulate that is half of Deli's hand wants to see cards in 1, and also Akiyama's recapturing of anything he put in 1, except Funguar is really clumsy. Notably, Funguar in 1 was one of the 2 ties in 1. Now, what about 2 versus 4? I thought 2 was better than 4, and I thought this because I think Akiyama's hand sweeps Deli's hand much better side to side with the 2-4-1-3 and the 3-5-1-4 than it does up-down, even though the 6-2-4-1 is really strong. It didn't line up to capture, for instance, the 5-2-2-2, and it just seems to me a less likely sweeper. So I thought 4 is better than 2 because 4 directs the game in a way that is more useful. And if we look at those 2 squares, there are 3 losses in 2 and only 1 loss in 4. So indeed, 4 was better than 2, and I think my reasoning there is sound. All right, we see a move, but we can think about that later. Then there was the comparison of 3 versus 7. I think 3, even if it doesn't set up against the strong side, sort of playing towards the strong side has its upsides. And so I think 3 was better than 7. And if we compare the number of losses in 3 and 7, there are 3 losses in 7 and 1 loss in 3. So 3 was definitely the better adjacent corner than 7. I thought 5 was pretty decent here, but I thought it was a specific card. You can't use the general number for 5 because the move in 5 always does such specific things. But how was 5 in general? Again, not the most useful way to look at it. Only 1 move in 5 was losing. 4 out of 5 were ties. So 5 was actually just generally good here. And I preferred 8 to 6. And there is one loss in both 8 and 6, but the win was in 8. Now the question for the win is, was it 2-4-3-1, 2-4-1-3, or 3-5-1-4 in 8? And the answer will be given to us shortly. In the meantime, we could look a little at the position. We have an impending L unless Akiyama goes 5. Akiyama does go 5 more than most people go 5. And you're not walking into any huge combos, so maybe he will. The answer was 2-4-1-3 and 8, which does seem the most natural move. So I do think these stack corners, like, you usually just want to take them and you're trying to figure out the right way to do it. 3 is, again, usually the second best option. I don't have a problem with 3 in general, but you usually just take. All right, let's compare how many ties Deli has against various moves after 8. So there's the one that's winning. If Akiyama goes 2-4-3-1 and 8, Deli only has a tie in 2. That's insane. So that's practically winning as well. And if 3-5-1-4 and 8, Deli has a lot of ties. So okay, if you were on 2-4-3-1 or 2-4-1-3 and 8, you were very likely to be winning this game. Not necessarily win, because I'm sure Deli will make it tricky, but I suspect you would be winning this game. Akiyama's move in 3 gave 23 of Deli's moves ties. Okay, this was not pressure. And it doesn't look like there was a way to get pressure in 3. And my other idea was 5-1-1-3 and 5, which gives Deli 7 ties. So that's actually, the moves in 8 are much better, but that's actually a pretty high pressure move. I'll stop using the solver there. So maybe some interesting things about evaluating different things. Deli says 6-2-4-1 and 5 is the oddest confrontation move that I can't do much with. That is a weird move. So Akiyama has picked up 2-4-1-3. My guess, just eyeballing it, is this is headed for 2. I think 2. Nope, 8. All right, bad job by me. And we have ourselves an L. So if we think back to prior stuff, there is, of course, the long L option, which Akiyama used in the last game, going in 7, with the 5 facing out. So yeah, long L is definitely an option. I assume Akiyama intends 3-5-1-4 and 5, which puts him up 6-4, and Deli does not have obvious play there. But he should be able to play, say, 2-3-3-2 and 4, and then 3-4-4-1 either gets a double capture in 2 or a single capture in 1, either is enough to tie. So 5-2-2-2 in 7 looks like a tie at distance. It might have a problem against 6-2-4-1 in 2, but I doubt it. I think 5-2-2-2. Did I say the right number of 2s? Maybe. Who knows? In 7 is probably a tie. And if I find that, I never really think I'm winning this position. So I'm not going to do it now because I'm lazy. But what I would do is just make sure that's a tie and then start, once I had concluded that that definitively is a tie, so I know I have that move, only then would I move on. But let's say I am extremely confident for some deranged reason that that is a tie. Like, no chance I'm wrong. What are we moving on to next? Well, that move in 8 did overcapture. So if you have a big setup in 4, now is the time. You do not. Yeah, I don't think you do. You can block 5. This is a pretty unpleasant position to block 5 because 6-2-4-1 in Akiyama's hand is really good for the left. and he has a very good card for 2 and 3-5-1-4, but that could easily be a tie as well. You can also check 2 first, but 2 sort of has the same problems 5 does. So I think I'd just be like, if 5-2-2-2 ties in 7, I'm just going to play it and take the tie. And when I do that, I definitely do give up chances to pressure, right? There are definitely spots where I go, I am quite confident there is not a win here. And I think I am under some pressure. I think I'm behind. I see a move that ties. I will play that. And there are players, and I think both these players I would include in this number, who will play positions like this more ambitiously and pose problems for their opponents that I do not pose. On the other hand, I also think going into move 6, um, this varies year to year, but Akiyama and Deli I would treat as both 95% plus correct on move 6. And so the odds of them missing something are existent but low. And if you think about 95%, you might think, okay, well, every problem you pose, you have 5% chance, but that's not quite right. Because the times they didn't get it right were when there were a ton of problems posed and they also already thought they were lost. So it's positions where they're not looking as deeply as they normally would. They're not just checking everything because they already think they're lost. And there's really a lot going on. In this position, it just seems like you're not going to pose those problems. So in those positions, they're blowing it at a higher rate than 5%. But in like other positions, it's much closer to 0. And I would think this would be, my thought would be there would not be much upside in posing problems. I don't think I'm winning the match by posing a problem here a useful rate of the time. All right. Stuff has pointed out 5-2-2, 5 many twos in 4, saying he doesn't think it's winning, but it does look fancy. And you can see real upside there. Okay, this is a move I should have considered. Because Flan Thing in 7 is obviously a big threat. And if you get your opponent to block 7 and you play Flan in 5, that's going to flip back anything needed. It's going to flip 8. And you have 3-4-4-1 as a really nice sweeper after that. I think the problem is you're only up 6-4 after doing that. They block 7, you go 5. You're up 6-4. And so they just play a double capture in 2, like 6-2-4-1. Admittedly, only 6-2-4-1 does that. And they're up 6-4, and yeah, your 3-4-4-1 takes it, but they take back for the tie. But this is a good point. I did not consider this. I should have. This is a nice idea, and we're probably about to see it. We do. Yeah, I like this touch. Also, I would note, so these are 2 of the best players on the site and 2 of the best players of all time. Now, we haven't checked every one of these games with the solver, I don't think, but the first one, despite some weirdness, flawless. Flawless not meaning perfect, because like you could almost always apply a little more pressure somewhere, but flawless meaning like no one was ever losing, no one ever missed a win. Game 2, a win was missed by Akiyama. Game 3, we... Did I check that one with the solver? No, we watched it. Okay, game 3 we should check. Because I have a thing I want to explore here. But worth noting, like, I'm not criticizing the players here. I'm saying this is an example of how many mistakes are made, because I think this is just a really interesting question. How many mistakes are made in absolute top level play? And I think we can all agree these are 2 top players, and also their recent results are very, very good in open. So it's not like these are 2 top players out of form or something like that. So I'm gonna put in this game 3 quickly. Oh, game 3 a win was missed. Akiyama actually should have taken a plus in 2 game 3, and that was winning. Okay. Yeah, Delhi's starter is losing in game this one as well. Right. Did Delhi have ties? Because if he was lost from his opening hand, then he did great. Right? If you're lost from your opening hand and you manage to somewhere trick your opponent and get a tie, you are doing awesome. And Delhi was saying he was going down a very tight rope in his early games. And the first 7 moves it has checked have all been 6 moves it checked were all losses, but there was a tie. Okay. So dangerous hand, clearly a really bad hand for Delhi in game 3. But Akiyama did miss a win there. And now we're seeing there were a bunch of tying starters. Okay. So game 1, Akiyama game 1 is good. Game 2, Akiyama missed a win move 3. Game 3, Akiyama missed a win game move 2. No, he found the win move 2. He missed a win move 4. Game 4 was clean. Game 5 was clean. And we are on to game 6. So we have played. So if you make, let's not include moves 8 and 9. You make 3.5 moves a game. Depending on if your first or second turn. If your second turn 2, 4, 6. If your first turn 1, 3, 5, 7. Let's cut out move 7. They're both going to be perfect on move 7. So you make 3 moves a game, and then you're just perfect for the rest. And you could say cut move 6 as well. I would say, given that no top player who has played any remote sample is not screwed up somewhere on move 6, it's worth including move 6. And non-top players are making mistakes on move 6 all the time because move 6 is still very difficult. Have I lost track of the game? 5, 1, 1, 3, and 5. All right, so I was assuming the tie was in 7, maybe multiple ties. All right, so the idea of this is it walks into a combo, but it combos back with 3, 5, 1, 4, and 2. Ooh, interesting. Now, Delhi can play 2 himself, and probably should. No, because Delhi's down 6-4. Wait, did Delhi blow this? Was this a losing idea? Stuff, you moron. Clearly should have gone with my move in 7. Oh, that's a bad way of thinking. I didn't refute it, if this is a refutation. Which we'll come back to in a moment because I'm distracted. I'm on my other thought. So, over the course of 6 games, each players are going to have made 18 moves. And not including this game, which we'll come back to, 3 losing moves have been made and 3 missed wins. So they've each played correctly for around 15 of 18 moves. Now, if all your moves are losses, and you play one of the losses, I wouldn't count that as a correct or incorrect move. So it's probably like 15 of 18 for Akiyama and 14 of 17 for Delhi, something like that. But that's around 5/6. This is between around 83.3% of moves are flawless, essentially. Now, I think in general, I was doing some data on this recently. I don't remember it. This was a tie. All right, I missed why this was a tie. Oh, because 3, 5, 1, 4, and 2 doesn't combo back like anything extra. Duh. All right, cool. Cool. I saw a combo and brain turned off. What's the phrase for that? Like thought ending cliche? No, there's some word. Thought eliminating? No, what is it? Thought terminating cliche. That's what it is. Where like you say a cliche and your brain just stops working. Like you stop trying to think any further. You said this thing that you think sums up the situation, and now your brain is not interested in details. It's not interested in anything. You have summed it up in a way. And now this is not quite how it's used because it's more used someone says the cliche and they're trying to kill a conversation or discussion, trying to unintentionally or intentionally. But we often do this with like the combo thing is you see, oh, they have a combo there. I can't allow that. And we terminate our thinking there. And I think it's really useful, and I just did it really stupidly, but it's really useful to be like, okay, let's look one more move further, see what the damage is. Yeah, just looking one move further usually gets you past it. I did not do that here. My thoughts were terminated. Uh, and we have a tie. Um, so, okay, no mistakes made here. All right. I think they're dead. They're done. Not dead. I said dead because Deli said phone is almost dead, and my brain has terminated, so I'm just saying the words I read. We're going to close that. I want to conclude by saying, though, 6 games between two of the best players on the site, and the flawless percentage is low 80% of moves from both players. Um, in general, I probably have that sheet somewhere accessible because I was working on it recently. I was thinking of making a video about it, but I'll talk about a little here. Um, in general, I think good players tend to be about around 80% for a year-long period, and great players, like the top players, tend to be between 85 and 90. That's usually the range they're in. And I don't really want to name names here because I'm not trying to call people out, but also I may make a video naming names. And most of the players who are clearly very good, but also like the weaker players in weekly opens, but that do play a bunch of games, are in the 75 to 80 range, sometimes 70 to 75. Yeah, and so you have a range. And but of course, when you're playing another top player, your percentage goes down. So both Deli and Akiyama, I think, long term are in the 85 to 90 range, but against each other are expected to be lower. So I guess what I wanted to say was like, I think them at around 83%. I think this is the expected level against each other because they're each going to pose each other more difficult problems than they would be posed against the field. Um, so this seems to me like both players playing at their correct, very high level, but your mileage may vary. But what this also tells you is even these top players are making mistakes and are beatable. We are all beatable. We are all beatable. That's really important, I think. Stupid solver.